Hey guys, welcome to KK Java Tutorials. In this video tutorial, we'll talk about Maven repository. First of all, we'll try to understand what is Maven repository, types of Maven repository, and then finally we'll discuss what philosophy Maven uses to download mentioned dependencies as well as plugins from different repository. Yeah, so let's start. So first question is that what is Maven repository? Well, so let's try to understand. Maven download the required artifacts of the build and dependency like all the library and other plugins which are configured as part of any project. There should be a common place where all such artifacts are placed. This common shared area is called as repository. Yeah. So as you know, Maven is a build automation tool, right? So in Maven we have a pom.xml. There we specify a lot of things like main things is that we specify all the dependency, right? Means uh, all the basically dependency on which our project dependents, like all the library or jars or all kind of plugins which require to build your application, right? And these plugins jars are basically placed on the basically some kind of repository, and when you try to build your project, then Maven try to download those repository from the different uh, uh, Maven will try to download those libraries or plugins from different repository, and that will put you in your local computer system, or you can say a local repository for future reference. Yeah. So Maven repository is nothing but the place where Maven stores all the libraries as well as plugins, right, which is required to build your project. Now in Maven, repositories are classified into three main categories. First, we have a local repository, then remote, and then central repository. Let's try to understand all three repository. First, let's talk about the local repository. The repository which resides in our local computer system, which are cached from the remote or central repository downloads and ready for reusage or usage. Yeah, the folder to hold or place all the dependencies in local can be configured in the settings.xml file of the Maven folder under the tag local repository. So by default, Maven local repository location is user home .m2 directory. Inside that the user home we have a .m2 directory, and there we'll have a repository folder, and there Maven basically downloads all the artifacts from the remote repository or central repository that will put into that local repository for future usage, right? But this location, this is the default location. This location can be overridden. So inside the Maven, when you install the Maven, then inside the Maven we have a conf folder. Inside the conf we have a settings.xml. That file you can copy and paste it into the your .m2 directory, and there in the inside settings.xml we have a tag local repository. There you can specify the local repository location. In that way you can override the default location for the Maven repository. Yeah, so that's the local repository. And once you configure, like if you create a folder is called empty m2 repo in your D drive, and afterwards when you try to build your project, then all the artifacts is going to download, and that will store into the D drive m2 repo folder. Yeah, so in that way you can override the default location of local repository. Now let's try to understand what is remote repository. This repository, as the name suggests, resides in a remote server, right, and which can be accessed by using a different file transfer protocol like file or HTTP. Yeah, a remote repository can be used for both downloading and uploading the dependencies and artifacts. Inside the pom.xml or settings.xml, you can define your remote repository. So you have a remote repositories inside that. Sorry, you have a repositories inside that. You have a repository. There you have to specify ID as remote dot repository, and you have to specify your remote repository URL. There there you would like to store your artifacts or download the artifacts. Yeah. Now last but not the least, we have a central repository. This is the repository provided by the Maven community. This repository contains large set of required libraries for any Java projects. Internet connection is required if a developer want to make use of this central repository, but no configuration is required for accessing this central repository. So you might have heard about the Maven super pom, right? So in super pom, already I had made video on that, what is super pom. If you look into the super pom, then we'll have a repositories. Inside the repository we have a repository. There you can see central repository would have configured something like that. ID would be central.repository and URL would be http:/repo1.maven.arc./maven2. This is the basically uh, central repository. This repository you can query on your browser. Make sure that you have internet connection, and you can see all the required library and plugins are available on this location. Yeah. Now, one and very important question is that how does Maven searches for dependencies, right? So as we have seen, there are three types of repositories in Maven. You have a local, then you have a remote, then we have a central. Then what philosophy basically Maven uses to download these artifacts, means all the dependencies and plugins from the different repositories. So let's try to understand. When Maven starts executing the build commands, Maven starts for searching the dependency as explained below order. First, it scans through the local repositories for all configured dependencies. If found, then it continues with the further execution. If configured dependencies are not found in the local repository, then it starts scanning through the central repository. Here, what point I would like to tell you. First of all, when you try to build your project, then Maven will try to search these dependencies in the local repository itself, which is in your .m2 inside the username .m2. Inside that you have a repository folder. Maven will start scanning that folder. If you have configured this, if you have overridden this location, then Maven will try to search basically all the dependency is available on the local repository or not. If that is there, then flow of execution will be continued. Else Maven will try to search this dependency on the central repository, which is provided by the Maven community, right? Now, second option, if it specifies dependency found in the central repository, then these dependencies are downloaded to the local repository for the future reference and usage. If not found, then Maven starts scanning into the remote repository. What point I am trying to say you, if first step fails, means dependencies are not available in the local repository, then Maven will try to download those dependencies from the central repository, and that will store into the local repository for future reference and usage. If dependencies are not found even in the central repository, then Maven will try to basically scan the remote repository. Now, third step, if no remote repository has been configured, if you have not configured remote repository, then Maven will throw an exception saying not able to find dependency and stop processing with some error, right? If found, then those dependencies are downloaded to the local repository for the future reference and usage, right? So third or last step is that if you have configured a remote repository, then Maven will try to download a dependency from the remote repository. If remote repository is not configured, then this will throw an error and that will stop the processing, right, with some error. If you have configured a remote repository, then all the dependency will be downloaded, and that will store into your local repository for future reference and usage, right? So guys, that's all I wanted to discuss in this video tutorial. I hope you enjoy learning this video. Guys, one request I would like to make you, if you did not subscribe Java Tutorials till then please go ahead and subscribe it. And to learn more about Java, you can refer our blog kkjavatutorials.com. Thank you.